Whoa, Consumer Reports doesn't recommend the new MacBook Pro? Alright, never mind, I guess everyone hates it now. No. Isn't it crazy how much people will just blindly follow whatever news source they happen to follow, base all of their knowledge after a couple people's opinion? I don't get that. Anyway, now all of you are to listen to me and understand that every word I say is the truth. And if you disagree with me, then you are wrong. So why don't we start with design? Now, the 15-inch MacBook Pro is noticeably heavier than the 13-inch. You don't care? We don't care about design. We just want to know about the battery life. Everyone wants to know about the battery life. Okay, you're gonna leave this video halfway through and dislike it, so why don't I just talk about what you're all wondering anyway? The battery life on the 15-inch MacBook Pro is fine. Okay, I might be the first person to think that, but remember, other than this year's new MacBooks, I have not had any other laptop, so I don't really know what to base it off of, but I can tell you any Windows laptop I've ever used has a much worse battery life. So in comparison to the last 15-inch MacBook Pro, I'm sure because of all these complaints it must be worse, but for me it's just varied depending on the tasks quite heavily. So if I'm just listening to music, I'm texting people, I'm browsing the internet, I do things like that, it's gonna easily last most of the day. I haven't noticed a terrible battery life at all. I can sit there, it lasts a very long time, up to 10 hours likely as advertised. It does change quite a bit when I start editing videos. That's when it shrinks down, sometimes to 5, even 4 hours, but usually I'm not editing for that long. And if I am editing, I'm usually in one place for a long time, which means I can typically find a power source, so it hasn't been a huge issue. The biggest noticeable battery life drop is when you're exporting a video. Typically exporting doesn't take very long, luckily, because of the transfer speeds have been dramatically improved. The speed on this guy is great, we'll get into that later, but usually when I'm exporting a video, the battery life shrinks down to 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, that sucks, but I kind of give it some credit, given it's processing a lot of things faster than any computer has before, for me at least. But that's the nice thing about USB-C charging, is it charges incredibly quick. Even while I'm editing a video while charging, it can go from like almost to 0 to 100 in like 2 to 3 hours. And I'm sure when you're not doing anything and it's just off, it charges even quicker than that. So I don't know exactly how good battery life was before this MacBook, but I can safely say that it's not an issue for me. It's not a deal breaker as it is to so many other people out there. Not a lot of people are exporting and rendering things every day like I am. And if you are, you gotta plug it in. It's not that hard. Speaking of plugging things in, I know everyone out there misses MagSafe. Yeah, I know, it's a shame you have to spend the other 2 seconds to kind of like hold the MacBook and plug in the cable at the same time. Yeah, that's so difficult. But there's something I prefer much more than MagSafe. I absolutely don't expect any of you out there to agree with me on this, but it's really handy that you can charge it from either side. I do not have to stretch the cable over to the power side. Whenever I'm sitting at a chair and the outlet's kind of far away, I can plug it in from this side, or if the power's over here, plug it in from that side. I like that. It's way simpler. Now that this laptop is officially mine, I'm not sending this one back. I got to play extensively more with the touch bar, which before I only had a couple hours, but now I've had to use it for a week or two. And currently for me, it's been more of a toy than a tool. And I'm not saying I don't like it. I think it's really nice. When I'm writing or texting, I use predictive text. That's something I love on iOS that is thankfully now on macOS. And when I'm texting other people, I love to send emojis. I couldn't do that as easily before. Usually in Finder, when a drop-down menu appears, you can select one of the buttons, saving the time of moving the mouse to that particular button. The other common use for me is I like to airdrop files between my devices all the time. And when I have a file selected, I can hit share, airdrop, and then the options for who to airdrop even show up on the touch bar. And you could do that before with the mouse. It's just this is kind of quicker because all the buttons are right there. You don't have to pinpoint where you want to be. When I'm using FaceTime, it's nice to have all those commands on the touch bar right there ready. Very handy. There's also the scrubbing tools that work on YouTube, or if you're listening to music, you want to find that specific part of the video or song. It's a neat new way to do things. And then of course there's the volume and brightness sliders, which allows you to be much more specific than just tapping buttons. It basically saves time in terms of putting the mouse on the right part of the display. And Apple does not want to move their touchscreens to a vertical display yet, so this is their compromise, moving touch controls to a horizontal surface. I think it's really nice that Apple's dipping their toes into the idea of touch interfaces on a Mac, but I personally wish they kind of went all the way in. There's only so much third parties can do with a really narrow top strip of buttons. I'd want to see what third parties and even Apple can do when you have an even larger canvas. What if the entire keyboard was replaced by a touchscreen, or the entire base of the MacBook? You could decide how big the trackpad is, where it is, the layout of the keys, how you like each keys. And of course, that entire bottom touch interface could change depending on the app you're using. And if people love the feel of keys so much, you could have some haptic feedback going on. I don't know. That's kind of distant laptop of the future, but that's what I'd like to see. I'm okay with really forward thinking like that. The issue is you have people like me over here who want to see how different and how futuristic you can make something, and you have people down here who still want like the USB-A port and are angry that it doesn't have that. And you're kind of like, come on, if you want something new, something has to change. Why would you buy a new product if you didn't want to change the way you do things? If you didn't want to change that, then just keep the product you have. Speaking of ports, we have a grand total of 5 on this one. One that that definitely shouldn't be there. 4 that are USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 ready. Missing all those old legacy ports has not affected my day-to-day experience as a tech user. I hear so much about how everyone hates dongles and accessories that they have to use, like they're still shocked that Apple removes ports like they haven't been doing this for years. But for me, at the end of the day, it's the transfer speeds that I'm a fan of, not which port you're using. Because these Thunderbolt 3 ports are so incredibly fast, the amount of time you spend using those dongles is such a small portion of the day. I make videos, obviously, all the time, usually 2 to 3 a day, and yes, that means I use SD cards quite often. Yes, there's no SD card slot, which if that's what you're used to, yeah, it can be quite annoying, but it's not something I would swear the entire product off over. When I'm done filming this, I'm gonna take the SD card both out of my microphone and my camera. I will plug them into a USB-C dongle, yes, put it in the computer, and it usually takes around 45 seconds to import, and then I'm done. Dongles out, import process over. That's why I don't understand people getting really upset about the removal of things like the SD card slot. Because of these new processors that are unbelievably fast, the import process is such a small part of using the computer. But of course, yes, I'm sure having the SD card slot would have saved me a ton of time. But I think Apple left it out intentionally. They don't remove these things because they think no one's using them. They remove them because they think there's a better way, and they're encouraging users and third parties to go that route. Apple wants to see camera companies think of a better way of importing massive amounts of footage than storing them all on these really light and plasticky, easy to lose cards. Floppy disk, anyone? Whether we come up with wireless data transfer or camera companies switch to USB-C more and more, importing can be even easier than it has been in the past. But of course, this is a conversion process, so those dongles are an annoying bridge, but we have to get over it. Usually like a minute-long process. It's not that difficult, guys. These Thunderbolt 3 ports are capable, in the right conditions, of transferring 40 gigabytes a second. I would much rather have that than keep these SD cards around and just say, no, these are good, we don't need to change them. Better yet, if we can master the art of wireless data transfer, I think that would be even easier. I really wish Apple could open up AirDrop to third parties and enable them in DSLR cameras so that when you're done recording a video, you can tap a button and wirelessly send it to your Mac. I think that would be great. And if not AirDrop, someone should have some universal wireless transfer service. That would be ideal. So as a daily filmmaker, as a constant user of that, as someone who uses SD cards constantly, I'm not bothered at all that Apple wants to ditch it for something better. Oh yeah, and I don't miss the USB port, I don't miss HDMI, and I have never once used the headphone jack on my MacBook. Should not be there. The trackpad has been doubled in size, which I really love, because when you're dragging things across the screen, you almost never run out of, dragging space, whatever you want to call it. And it has excellent palm projection, so almost all the time now, since the trackpad's so much bigger, my palms are resting on it, but I have never once had the mouse be confused about what is my pointer and what is my palm. It just gets it. They're really smart about that. Surprisingly, and I'm not sure why this happened, but the fingerprint reader next to the touch bar absolutely understands my finger with no issues, which is crazy because every single fingerprint reader I've had on the Note 7, the 6P, my iPhones, they were never able to read my finger accurately. I have this disease called psoriasis, my hands look disgusting, and it kind of makes my fingerprints harder for computers to understand. But for some reason, MacBook understood it perfectly the first time and has still got it just fine, has never said finger not recognized once. Really unexpected, but great, I'm not complaining. You can use that fingerprint reader for logging in, as well as something else that I thought was nice. When you're installing third-party software on your computer, instead of entering in your administrative password, you can just put your finger there, and that's how you install software. That saves a lot of time. I wish they would apply that to everything. Sometimes when it's like, sign into iCloud, I want to be like, fingerprint. I know there's something about security and data, and I don't care. I think that would be convenient. People like my parents are always forgetting their passwords. You can't really forget your fingerprint, so that would be nice. What if your finger falls off? Okay, then have a failsafe. Have a security question. But fingers falling off, I don't think are an incredibly common event, but either way, I just think fingerprint recognition should be at the front of all security. I thought about talking about gaming in this review, but we all know Macs aren't for hardcore gaming, so should I even mention it? Second of all, I don't really play a lot of video games. I played Mad Max on it, ran great at 2K at 60. That's about all I can tell you. Minecraft works, Age of Empires works. If you guys really want a what games work on my MacBook video, then comment down below, but let's just not waste time on it here. We all know what MacBooks are for. The display looks great, very bright, very colorful. Welcomed nits. It's a noticeable improvement, as well as the speakers. They're much louder than before, and they easily fill the room. And the other very noticeable upgrade I've noticed is the turn-on time, or boot up speed, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, when it's powered off and I power it on, it boots up quick. It almost feels like it's no time at all. As soon as you open it, it's ready. Faster than any computer I've ever seen before. Faster than my phone, maybe. It was just a lovely surprise I wasn't expecting. How about we talk about the reason I bought this thing, though? Because it wasn't for the size. If processing power wasn't a factor, I would definitely get the 12-inch MacBook. That thing is light, it's crazy thin, and any bag you add it to, you don't even notice it's there. But because I'm a video editor, unfortunately, I need kind of power with me on the go. That's why I have the 15-inch version, not the 13-inch. My main iMac before was a 2011 21.5-inch iMac, 2.8 gigahertz Intel i7 quad-core, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 megabytes of video memory. It's been doing all right, but it's definitely kind of slow because, you know, it was before the time of flash storage, so it's relying on SATA drives, which, you know, aren't the best in terms of exporting. And in terms of Geekbench scores, obviously the MacBook Pro comes a bit ahead, but in terms of exporting speeds, the MacBook Pro cut in half what the iMac did. Podcast editing is the trickiest kind we do because there's 3 cameras going, sometimes 4, and they're long. They're usually over an hour and we have to export those. And before I would just leave it exporting on my Mac before I go to bed because it would take about 5 hours. And with the new MacBook Pro, when we've edited a podcast on there, it can export it in a flat 2 hours. And of course, it's even faster when it comes to simple tech videos like this one. What used to take 40 to 50 minutes to export before now takes 15 to 20, saving me tons of time. And the 16 gigs of RAM I have on this MacBook also comes in handy because while I'm exporting in Premiere, I can still do all of my casual tasks and usually run Adobe After Effects on the side. And of course, the side effect of this incredible speed and performance is that the battery life has drastically gone down when you're doing that many things at once. But you know, I'm really okay with that given before I couldn't take it with me anywhere. It was an iMac. And now as long as I have a little outlet somewhere, I can have all that power with me anywhere I go. I've never even had a crash with Adobe Premiere except for that one time, but no, never mind. So great update, great specs, and a great futuristic approach to the...
Hold on. Hey, you said accept. What did you just gloss over?
Dan from Tailosive Movie Reviews, stay on your channel.
Okay, no, you're leading him on now. You have to bring it up.
I do not. This is my channel.
Okay, you may be an Apple sheep, but you have to hold yourself accountable as a tech reviewer because you have 10,000 people watching you now. You gotta be honest with them.
Okay, Dan, they get it. Guys, this doesn't affect my opinion of the product, but I feel like I should tell you it. I don't know if this is a glitch, I don't know if this is Apple's fault or Adobe's fault, but while I was editing the biggest video of the year, iOS is better than Android, there were tons of interviews that didn't make it into that movie, and it's because I couldn't really splice them in a good way, but those interviews were at 4K, and we had multiple angles for them. I'll just say it, at the end of the day, we had over 4 hours of 4K footage. When I loaded them into Premiere glitched out and crashed, and it crashed hard. I even cut it on tape, which was hard for me to do because I'm an Apple sheep. I defend these products till I die. So the following footage you may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Unfortunately, even when I restarted the computer and opened the project back up, I could edit it for a little while and then it would do the exact same thing. It would crash again. The Mac or Premiere reaches its limits when you throw 4 hours of 4K at it. And I'm very sure that if I was editing with Final Cut, I wouldn't have this kind of problem. I've edited smaller 4K videos on the Mac and had no problems at all, but I'm curious if anyone out there has thrown that much at it and had the same problems I had. I'm hoping some software updates would fix this eventually. I've looked it up and I haven't had a lot of people experiencing this problem, but I figured it's a rare occasion, but I should tell you about it anyway because I need to be honest. I've decided this year when I review products, I'm gonna give them a letter grade, and the MacBook Pro 15-inch gets a B+. I'm docking points for battery life, as well as the rare occasion when it crashes. I feel like if it can handle 4K most of the time, which it does, it shouldn't have that kind of issue even when I'm throwing tons of data at it. And I'm docking the points a little bit because the price is kind of high. Even for an Apple product, I think it's a little high. I think everyone out there agrees. I still think it's worth it. I think it's worth the buy, but still, it's quite a bit. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.